Hello and welcome to another episode of the Tejano Traveler. I'm your host Wally, and today we are doing something a bit different. We're learning all about El Camino Real de los Tejas. We have part one here, which is all about South Texas and how all these roads ended up going north. The first place we see is the Rio Grande River crossing. Here, people would look for natural fords to cross, and this was one of them. Here along the trail, we have the Trevino Uribe Ranch, which is still up in San Ignacio. It used to be a fort and a ranch house, as you can see by the thick walls. People would come here to protect themselves from the Native American attacks, but it was a stop on the El Camino. El Camino went from Mexico City all the way to Natchitoches in Louisiana. Hope I'm saying that right, because they made fun of me when I was in Natchitoches, if that is how you say it, because I kept saying Natchitoches. But all these routes would cross the river, and you would need a place to sort of rest, either before crossing the river or right after. And here we have Los Corralitos, which was also a ranch place where people would stay along the route. Of course, there weren't any cars or anything like that, so most of the time you had to do it by walking. And here's another Rio Grande River crossing. You could sort of see why it would be easier to cross here from seeing these rocks. It's not as deep. It's natural. You wouldn't have to construct a bridge, and it'd be safer. Another area where they would cross is El Paso de Jacinto in Laredo, Texas, and if you're there, you also get to experience some of the history behind Laredo at the Villa Antigua Border Heritage Museum, and also get to experience a lot of history at the San Agustin Plaza area, where they have a cathedral, they have a plaza, gazebo, and some shady trees for you to sort of sit under and contemplate how life was like on El Camino. It's also a Laredo's historic area with the La Posada Hotel and the Museum of the Republic of the Rio Grande. This area used to be its own country at one point because it decided Mexico wasn't good enough and neither was Texas. So that's what they ended up doing, separating themselves, and they became a republic. Plenty of history here, like I said. Springs were very important along the trail, and there used to be the Los Ojuelos Springs. Of course, they dried up, and now it's just an old ranch, but there's still history here. You can go there. It's private area, so you can't really go in there. But right across on the opposite side of the road is a cemetery. It's old, it's ancient, and I kind of imagine this being used for centuries by the people who would cross there and start making their way to San Antonio. And then we witnessed our first South Texas Camino marker. Back when they celebrated the 100th year of Texas, they sort of celebrated El Camino as well. And they put some historic markers, and you can see them along the trail if you keep going. When we're reaching Crystal City / Carrizo Springs, you run into Espantosa Lake, which was a stop. You had to wait until the waters were low enough to cross this creek. And it's called Espantosa Lake because people used to see apparitions and ghosts and all this other kind of stuff. So if you go here, you can also go ghost hunting. Coming in from the west, a stop was the Landmark Inn, which is now the Landmark Inn State Historic Site. People would come here, rest up, stop in their carriage, feed their horses, get a nice meal, take a nice bath, and just, take a break from all the travels that they were having. But this is just west of San Antonio. You can go visit it. It was a stop on El Camino coming from California, Arizona, New Mexico, El Paso. This was a place to stop and give your party a rest. And it's right along the Medina River, so rivers, as you will see on these videos, are very important landmarks. Then towards the Gulf, for the people who landed on the coast of Texas, we have the Misión Nuestra Señora del Refugio. In Refugio, Texas, people would stop here as they came off the boats and start making their way through the already established roads that led to Goliad and from Goliad to San Antonio. Here we have the Mission River. Of course, this train track isn't new, but gives you an idea of how important travel was to this area. And this was close to Mission Espiritu Santo, the first site. Mission Espiritu Santo was an important stop along the route. It's where the ruins of Fort St. Louis were, that La Salle had established, which were completely burned down by the Carancoas. But that was the first site, and then they realized, no, there's too many natives, too many bugs, let's move. So they moved Mission Espiritu Santo to the Tonkawa Bank along the Guadalupe River. Um, they moved here and decided, you know what, maybe we can do just a tiny little bit better. This place was still a bit too traumatic for them. They wanted better land, so they moved it to the third site, which is on private property. You can't really see. But they decided that also wasn't good. So they moved closer to Presidio La Bahia, or La Bahia. I'm not quite sure how to pronounce it. But this is one of my favorite places in Texas. It's in Goliad. It's an old fort with the Laredo Chapel that you see right there. It's an amazing place to go visit if you get a chance. But these forts would protect people along the trails, along El Camino Real de los Tejas. It was an important place for all the people traveling. They got a place to worship, they got a place to feel safe, and they would stay there for a couple of weeks while they would recuperate. And right next to it, we also have the final side of the Misión Espíritu Santo de Zúñiga at Goliad State Park. Now, this is an amazing mission. If you go and visit it, it's been renovated, but it looks like it would have looked like back then, minus some outdoor decorations. But if you come here, you get to find out a bit more about the history and how it was an important part of the trail. Like I said, the missions were built in order to um, convert the Native Americans, but they also served as a safe haven for those traveling El Camino. So just the view of the missions would have excited these travelers as they're heading from New Mexico to Louisiana. They would get excited because they knew, one, there'd be food, two, there'd be shelter, and three, they'd feel safe because there was a garrison nearby at the fort. Also, if you come to Goliad, you can go to the El Camino Real de los Tejas Visitor Center, which is a nice little place that teaches you a lot about El Camino and what was involved. And it's located at an old Spanish style hacienda, which is also pretty cool to look at because you get to find out some of the architectural um, ways that people used to build houses. Like those stairs were weird. But look at that kitchen. It's an awesome kitchen slash dining room. I would love to have something that big at my tiny apartment. And look at that table. I just want to eat around it. Then if you continue along, you reach the Misión Nuestra Señora del Rosario State Historic Site, which was the other mission in the area. It's mostly ruins now, but you can go and see it from the gates. And that's what it would have looked like back then. Like I said, now we just pretty much have the walls. You have to get special permission to go there and view the ruins, but it's still being studied, but it's at least being taken care of for future generations. Like I said, it was a stop, probably the final stop before you reach San Antonio that had any real significance. Then we have the Cabeza Creek crossing, and as you can see, this is what the land looked like, kind of flat, no real coverage. And then you had to go and cross creeks, which sometimes you had to wait for depending on the water level. And then one of the last final stops was the Casablanca in Floresville. It was an important place to stop and rest. They called it El Rancho de las Cabras here, and they still sort of celebrate it by having a trail that follows along the old historic trail. So if you're there, you can go check out the area. But that's what the El Camino Real de los Tejas looked like in South Texas. Hopefully you'll want to learn more because I got 4 other parts. Thanks for watching. Bye-bye.